Alright, so now it's time to go ahead and tweak the global illumination, start making it look good, and start closing in on our final settings and wrap this little scene, this project up. So we have too few photons in the scene to actually get a good photon map result. Let's select this first light here and open up the attribute editor. We can see we're only using 100,000 photons. That is not good enough. It's not even close to being what we need to get this to look good. So let's go ahead and let's do 1 million photons instead. So that's a 1 and 6 zeros. I'm just going to copy that number. Unfortunately, Maya, we can't just open up a attribute editor for all of these lights and just change the setting all in one shot. We have to come in here and change them all one by one. Okay, so with that done, we have 1 million photons per light, which comes out to a grand total of 3 million photons. That's a lot of photons, but it might not be enough. But let's go ahead and check it out anyway. Now you'll probably notice that we have an output window down here that opens up when you open up Maya, and the output window is actually extremely useful. It's useful because we can see what mental ray is doing underneath the hood, so to speak, or behind the scenes. Let's go back here to the Maya window. I want to go to the render menu, and under render current frame, open up the options box and make sure that the verbosity level is set to info. Okay, now let's hit render. Let's open up the output window, and we see this line right here where it says Maya base version 10.8 compiled on so and so date. Underneath here is where all our render stats are going to start to pop up here for this global illumination. So we can see on the bottom left part of the interface here, we have the mental ray photon emission being emitted here, so we can see track the progress there. And when it's finished, it's going to tell us some information here and some data on the photon emission. There we go. We scroll up here, we can see each light is being evaluated. So area light number 3, area light number 2, area light number 1 over here, and it tells us how many photons all these lights are contributing to the overall global illumination effect. And we can see it looks very blotchy right now, very nasty, okay, which is obviously no good. So what can we do to fix this? Well, let's go to the render settings, go to indirect illumination here. We're going to go to the photon render settings over here. Okay, and our accuracy is pretty low right now. It's only 500, which is no good. Okay, and we can see here we're using lots of photons, 1 million photons. So let's increase this accuracy. Let's increase it to something like 2,000. Alright, and let's go ahead and let's just render out this wall back here. Do render region. I'm not using the IPR. I'm doing that intentionally because when you're doing a regular render, you can see the progress down here in the lower left of the mental ray photon emission, which I prefer, as opposed to the IPR, which doesn't show you that, and it just kind of hangs there while it calculates the photon emission, and you really don't know if it crashed or if it froze or what. Most of the time it doesn't, but that's just me. Okay, so almost done here, emitting 3 million photons into the scene. Okay. Okay, we can see that some of the splotching appears to have gone away, but we still have splotching on that wall, which is not good. So what we're going to have to do is a couple of things. I'm going to increase the accuracy to 4,000, but I'm going to need more photons. 1 million photons per light, in other words, 3 million photons for this scene in total, is just not enough. We're going to need a lot more. We're going to need at least 2 million photons per light to get ourselves a good render here, a good result. And we can see the radius is set to 0 right now, so we're letting mental ray have control over that. And we're not using merge distance. And the reason I'm not using a merge distance is because despite the fact that it benefits you by lowering the size of the photon map, it's going to go ahead and create these gaps in the photon map where there's basically missing photons, which is going to create more of the splotching. And we don't want that. That's actually what we're trying to get rid of right now. So what I'm going to have to do, let me close that. Let me close this. what I'm going to have to do is take these lights and change them to 2 million photons each. So let me just copy that number. I'm just going to quickly copy and paste it to each light. Okay, so now we have 3 lights emitting 2 million photons each, which comes out to a grand total of 6 million photons. That should be enough to get this scene to look pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and render again. And this time it's going to take a little while because we're doing 6 million photons, which is a pretty good amount. And you can see down here in the mental rate photon emission status bar that it's going to take a pretty good amount of time. Another thing you want to do is open up this output window. That way we can monitor what's going on with mental rates. So if anything were to go wrong per se, we'd be able to see in the output window. But what could possibly go wrong? Right? Since this is going to take less than a minute, it's going to take a few seconds to do this. I'm just going to go ahead and pause the video and unpause it when it finishes. Okay, so it just finished doing the mental rate photon emission, and we got ourselves a serious problem. We have no render, and if we open up the script editor, and I did that simply, let me close this and this. Down here in the lower right, there's this little icon down here, which is the script editor. And you can also open up the script editor by going to Windows and going over here to General Editors, Script Editor. Okay, we can see we have a serious problem. And if we look here, where it says error, it says fatal mental rate. It says mental rate encountered a fatal error. Then it says the system may have become unstable. Please save the scene and exit Maya. Uh-oh. That's a very serious problem. Now, to get more information about the error, that's what the output window is for. We'll check the output window and we can see that there's some serious problems. It says fatal, so and so and so, can't allocate X amount of bytes, blah, 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 blah. So what is Mental saying in its weird alien language? It's basically saying, look, you got a serious memory issue. I ran out of memory and I had to crash. Now I don't work anymore. The only way to make me work is to close Maya and open Maya back up again. That's great and all, but we have a very serious problem. If we close Maya and open it back up again, Mental Ray is going to work, but every time we try to render out 2 million photons per light in this scene, or 6 million photons in total, it's going to crash again and again and again. So the problem here is not Maya. It's not restarting Maya. That's not the solution to this problem. The only way we can fix this problem is, well, we can fix it a couple of ways. The first way to fix it, and probably the best way to fix it, is going to be to switch to a 64-bit operating system. See, right now, I'm working in a 32-bit environment, and that's why this occurred. Because of the limitations of memory in Windows 32-bit, we can't do things like this with Mental Ray that require lots and lots of memory. What we need to do is switch to a 64-bit pipeline, that is, switch to 64-bit operating system and get lots and lots of memory. A good 4 gigs of memory will serve you right. The problem is right now I'm using 32-bit. Now, a lot of people are using 32-bit. Students, even professionals and freelance artists, a lot of people are still using 32-bit. So if you have 32-bit, does this mean that I'm stuck? I can't render out 6 million photons with Mental Ray in this scene? I'm forced to upgrade to a new system? Not exactly. There is a little solution to the problem that we can do here with Windows 32. And the solution can be found in the Maya help documentation. So let's go ahead and do that. Before we close Maya and save out our scene and whatnot, let's hit F1 on the keyboard to open up the Maya documentation. Okay. And let's go to under General, let's go open up Basics. Let's go down to Performance Tips. And you'll see the first performance tip says, set Maya to use maximum memory. Increased virtual memory limit. And then there's a description here. It says the following refers to Maya 32-bit systems on Windows. That applies to me and probably to a lot of people out there. Under Windows XP, the normal application memory partition is only 2 gigabytes for the system and 2 gigabytes for applications. This means that even if you have 4 gigabytes installed on your 32-bit machine, you're still going to be limited by Windows 32-bit. This is a very serious problem. because it means that Maya can't get all the memory it needs, and also means that mental ray can't get the memory it needs. So when mental ray crashed, it was basically saying, I can't get more memory, I'm drowning here, and I'm dead. So the way to fix this is right here. It says for Maya, this means that the largest virtual memory limit that can be obtained is 2 gigs, which I just stated earlier. What we can do is under Windows XP Service Pack 2, there's a system boot option that partitions the memory into 1 gigabyte for the system and 3 gigabytes for the user. So basically the default that Windows 32-bit does is it reserves 2 gigabytes of your system for itself, and then it reserves 2 gigabytes for other applications, say Maya and mental ray. By doing the 3 gigabyte switch, we can change that. We can give 1 gigabyte to the system and 3 gigabytes to applications such as mental ray and Maya. By giving it that extra gigabyte, that can make the difference between mental ray crashing or rendering successfully. So this 3 gigabyte switch allows us to do this. Now you can go here to these Microsoft links here, which will explain more about this 3 gigabyte switch. There's instructions on the internet on how to do the 3 gigabyte switch. I'm actually not going to do it because it goes outside of the scope of this tutorial, and I'm not going to go into Windows and start doing a 3 gigabyte switch. But you can find out how to do that on the internet. It's actually pretty easy. You just have to go in and edit the boot INI file. So go ahead and have a look at some of these links to see how to do the 3 gigabyte switch. And once you do it, you can start rendering with mental ray in Windows 32-bit with a lot more stability and a lot more memory. So let me close that. Okay, so now that we know we can't render this out unless we do the 3 gigabyte switch, I'm going to have to go ahead and do the 3 gigabyte switch myself. That's going to require me to close Maya and reboot my workstation, and when I come back, I should be able to render out this scene with 6 million photons. So I'm going to go ahead and save out this scene. I'm going to do the 3 gigabyte switch, and I'm going to come back and render this thing out successfully.